Hillary has been lengthening her excuses as to why she lost the election. She didn't really lose the election. It was stolen from her by, I think it's up to 24 different excuses she has now. Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia. And as I said, my grandfather was a Macedonian content farmer, and we often think about, gathering on the porch and recalling the old days on the Macedonian. He never thought that the old content farmers he left behind in Macedonia would one day steal the U.S. presidential election. They are gnarled, hard-working Macedonian peasants, and the way they were able to reach out and steal the election from a well-oiled machine.
It is the 12 days before Zoran Zaev resigns. The outgoing Prime Minister of the Republic of Macedonia, Zoran Zaev, must finally step aside, and a new Prime Minister from the same party takes over on January 3rd. Not quite the 12 days of Christmas, but you get the idea, and the mood in Macedonia will certainly be more festive once Zaev steps aside. Meanwhile, as Macedonians around the world prepare to celebrate Christmas on whichever date, and New Year's, scandals or life goes on. News of the various scandals rocking the Macedonian government continues to drip out slowly, and the politicking of the parties will start to ramp up as we approach both the January 3 deadline for Zaev to step down and the April 12 election date. The largest political party in Macedonia, and the one currently in opposition hoping to win those elections, held a large rally in Skopje where the crowd affirmed the party's position of, quote, never North, always Macedonia, unquote, throughout the rally. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin and calling in from Skopje, Macedonia, where we're keeping the champagne on ice for Zaev's expected resignation, but still keeping an eye on because he might decide to try and wiggle his way out of this thing.
It might pull a fast one. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the calendar here, and it's worth noting that we are recording this on Sunday, December 22. It'll drop on Monday the 23rd, 2 days before, as the Macedonian Information Agency always calls it, quote-unquote, Catholic Christmas on the 25th. Leaving out the Protestants. I don't understand that. I never will. So the 31st is on a Tuesday, so January 3 is on a Friday. Well, that's a good day for Zaev to step down. Macedonians have a weekend then to celebrate. A new prime minister from Citizen will be chosen on that day. Vomero takes a couple of positions, the Interior Ministry, Health and Welfare, a couple of deputy minister positions, changes and whatnot. So assuming everything is on course, Parliament will have a session that day in which Zoran Zaev steps down and a new member of Citizen becomes the prime minister. Yeah. And right now that's Oliver Spasovski, correct? The current,
he should be, because he should relinquish his position anyway to give it to Vomero, and it's most convenient for Zaev to have him as prime minister, although he's now been mentioning this very far left socialist lady, very rich socialist lady, as there usually are, Mila Tsarovska, who worked in all the Soros NGOs on baby killing and all that good stuff. So she's popular with the SDSM base just because of the aforementioned reasons, and she might also be the prime minister.
Ah, okay. Well, we still got a few days before that decision is made. And then any idea on who Vomero is going to nominate?
Vomero, so far for the Interior Ministry, which is the most watched one, it should be Orza Georgievski. You wouldn't know him. He's like the current, like a shadow Interior Minister. He would be the one most frequently asked to comment on security issues in this iteration of Vomero. Then they have like a very outspoken young agriculture expert who is definitely going to be the deputy agriculture minister. This is important because the agriculture ministry is often abused to give money to farmers before the elections, and
of course
he would keep an eye on this so that the ministry does not plan to give all the farming subsidies in the months before the elections. Trajko Slavevski could be the deputy finance minister.
Yeah, former finance minister, right?
Yeah. He was a very solid economics professor.
Sure.
He was part of the Gruevski free market reforms in the early years of his term. So yeah, I mean, it's not nothing spectacular is expected.
Sure.
Their job is just to stop the rampant abuse of the ministries, especially the police, the interior ministry, because we should be reminding this every episode. We have a near police state here with dozens of members of parliament in their investigation and dozens of high-level VMRO officials in prison or being persecuted on charges drawn up by a ridiculously corrupt and crooked person like Cvetin.
Yeah. Now, speaking of finance, I noticed in the news that I don't know if the parliament passed it or if the government just proposed it, the next budget, which includes a flat tax of 10% for the next 3 years. Of course, when this government was finally got into office in 2017, they proposed a progressive income tax and much higher income tax rates, wanted to scrap the flat tax that has worked well for Macedonia with the past government, has worked well throughout many European countries, has actually increased revenue. They proposed to scrap that, introduce the progressive income tax rate. Now they have admitted defeat, and the current budget calls for the flat tax to continue, which I find is delicious.
Yeah, it was adopted in Parliament today, and it's a near 4 billion euros, which easily the biggest budget for Macedonia so far. And they've been completely unable, the Zaev government, to actually build something of public infrastructure, which here is, fully government funded.
Yeah,
and it's lacking. And so basically, everything on top of the allotted money for public administration, which are the built-in costs, everything else above this is practically going to go to more welfare spending, more this socialist redistribution schemes, which Zaev is so happy about. It's meant to buy votes before the elections, and this is why the VMRO deputy ministers, interim ministers, are going to have to be very careful to see how the money is being spent before the elections, because he outright wants to buy the elections with borrowed money.
Right. And I was just thinking, as you were talking about that, and the budget that's been adopted and whatnot, we haven't heard a bloody thing from this government in months about attracting foreign investment. They've just gone completely silent on that, and I don't know if that's because they have nothing to say, which is likely the case, or they're just consumed with the scandals and the upcoming elections, or maybe it's a combination of all three of those things. But the former government always talked about the foreign investment that it was bringing in, always talked about how it was going out around the world and talking to other companies and other countries about the great benefits of investing in Macedonia. And there's just been absolutely crickets from this government, not just in the past few months, as I just mentioned a moment ago, but frankly, during their entire term of office. Am I missing something there?
Yeah, they have nothing to show for. Our buddy Vlatko Djurčev was in a debate with I think it was Damian Manchevsky, the public administration minister. And at one point, they were discussing this precise issue, and Vlatko kept hammering at him like, okay, but give me one factory, just one name of one single factory. You should be able to do it. And ultimately, Manchevsky gave up and said, no, okay, there were none. We had no investments. Let's move on, talk something else.
Wow.
Before that, obviously, there was a famous minister in charge of attracting FDI, foreign direct investment, to Macedonia, who was angry at the journalist when, similarly, the journalist asked her, well, name me one company you've been working on, and she couldn't, and then said, made this face which became a meme instantly, and then she said it was a trick question, not a fair question, to ask the foreign investment minister to name a single foreign investment company. She managed to. There is some money coming in, but it's assumed widely that it's all like companies which already came under Gruevski who are now reinvesting, and like every 3 or 4 months, Zaev would mention a company, but some of it happens. He mentioned Volkswagen coming here, like a huge German investment before the referendum. None of this happened. So it's a complete disaster in this regard.
Right. None of that. But today is, I think today is the first day of winter. Maybe it's yesterday. I'm not sure, but we associate winter with snow. And of course, the only money that is, or some of the money that is coming in, revolves around a different type of snow, white powder, cocaine. There's a new scandal regarding an actress, which I didn't get into the details of that, so maybe our listeners want to hear a little bit more about that, because I found it fascinating how it tied in with USAID.
Yeah, she's an actress in one of the USAID funded programs here, which were meant to re-educate Macedonians against.
What's the name of the program?
Familia Markovski. Again, I'm going to give my farmer speak early. It was supposed to be my farmer speak. It was like a family drama sitcom, like a tragical sitcom in which like a dour and difficult to watch. I don't watch Macedonian television. I've made it clear.
I don't watch television at all.
Yeah, even better. It had all the usual tropes which SDSM would use against Vamira. So like there is a father who is angry at his son who turns out to be a homosexual, or the father is ordered by his boss working in the public administration to go protest with the pro-government people against the young, youthful, brave, courageous leftist protesters who represent SDSM. Obviously, the father would, in these cases, represent a homophobic right-winger or a forced Vamira supporter. Like nobody likes Vamira other than those who are forced to come to their events. This was the story which USAID wanted to transmit with this program. They paid like 450,000 euros, euros, whatever, to produce it through Channel 5. It was used to bring Channel 5, which was the second best watched television in Macedonia, on the side of the name change. So this television abruptly changed its very pro-Vamira editorial policy once this contract was signed, and started supporting SDSM and supporting the name change in a move that would make your head spin. And it was, somebody should do a sitcom on television editors and owners who change sides on the drop of the hat. And this actress, Silvia Stoyanovska, she's the wife of a famous, the widow of a famous actor, Nenad Stoyanovsky, who we kind of grew up with. He was like this edgy, interesting actor when we were younger. And she was a prominent protester, always in the colored revolution. People have been having fun now digging up old videos of her moralizing on this program called Familia Markovski, the Markovski family, and moralizing during the colored revolution protests against Gruevski, how Gruevski is a criminal, corrupt, blah, blah, blah. But meanwhile, she's been married with a guy called Vojislav Budisavljevic, who was previously arrested for cocaine smuggling apparently on more than one occasion, and who has a brother who lives in Spain who also does cocaine, deals in cocaine.
Maybe does it too.
Yeah, maybe just for inspection purposes.
Yes, quality control.
Yeah, and I'm actually proud. I'm not even angry at the guys. This is excellent. This is, go big or go home kind of a thing. We're not dealing with like 5 kilos or a kilo or something like that. They chartered a submarine from Colombia, and they actually managed to fill it with like apparently 3 tons of cocaine and sail it from Latin America to Galicia in Spain, to northwestern Spain, where it was intercepted.
Wow.
We have a submarine. The colored revolution has a submarine full of drugs. It's beautiful. And they were going to give the drugs to somebody who was apparently, switching vessels. Maybe they felt they're followed, so they were going to give the drugs to another boat who was going to take it to England, where the money is. And they were caught while, dumping the cargo, transporting the cargo. This was in late November. It was a big story that a submarine full of cocaine was intercepted close to Spain, but nobody told us that it's Sylvia organizing this.
The Macedonian connection wasn't known then, right? How funny. So she was involved in logistics?
Well, she's the wife, the unwed wife of the organizer.
Uh-huh.
So she was arrested, but then promptly released into house arrest. So she was, as the wife of one of the main culprits apparently in the drug bust.
Right.
She should have known, must have known.
Yes.
Just handling money, handling.
It's something
whatever.
they talk about over the dinner table. So what did you do today? Well, I organized logistics for the submarine to get from Colombia across the Atlantic over to Spain, and so.
Yeah. Pedro's been giving me a hard time. He can't find the proper type of cocaine for the submarine, and now we gotta crave it up.
Well, I can imagine.
Batteries.
Let's be honest here. Within a submarine, you're submerged, underwater. There's certain, atmospheric or climatic conditions that have to be maintained in order to preserve the cocaine, depending on how it is wrapped, etc. So these are important questions that she probably discussed with her husband. So you want to make sure that the product is delivered without any blemish and untouched and in pristine shape.
Yeah. Now we're turning into a proper narco state. This is, Zaev is producing marijuana, tons of it apparently, or he ostensibly for marijuana oil, cannabis oil, but none of it has been sold yet, and money keeps pouring into the business. So I'm assuming they're growing this stuff and it's going somewhere in some shape or form. Then, there was this great video of Sylvia Stoyanovska, this actress, dancing at some wedding, I suppose, with Pavla Bogoevsky, who was her friend from the Colored Revolution. He was obviously the more prominent spokesman of the Colored Revolution. And he was member of parliament for SDSM. And he was had to resign after he was driving in a taxi and called his dealer on the phone, and he was ordering half a gram. He didn't say of what. Then afterwards, he hilariously tried to say it's half a gram of cannabis oil, which, I don't know how it's bought, but that's not the way you buy cannabis oil.
Right.
And they're dancing together, and he was obviously buying cocaine, and she's now the second Colored Revolution star to fall on the but at least she's going down with a bang. She's going down.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is funny because Ali Ahmeti is probably sitting back just laughing at this whole thing, because here you have all these Macedonians that are involved in being caught for the drug trade and drug use and what exactly, and we all know, and Ali Ahmeti himself has practically admitted that the former NLA and now Dewey are involved in one form or way of another with drug dealing and drug trafficking, as well as human trafficking, trafficking in women, young girls, arms, etc. And that's how the NLA made a lot of its money, and that's how I think Dewey also made money. Again, he's actually admitted that. I've got an article somewhere here where he admitted that to one of the major main outlets. Yeah. But he's sitting back just laughing. Yeah, you're right. He's calling these people rank amateurs because he gets away with it. So that's funny.
Yeah, we sit on the heroin transportation line from Afghanistan to Turkey.
Right.
Europe, and Albanian mafia is very prominent in this. The police, the security services of the countries along the route are obviously involved in this. On a more elevated level, they would give you
a higher level,
right of
but I'm bummed.
Yeah, but the Albanians are usually the pushers, the muscle in the street here and in the Czech Republic, from where they smuggle it to Germany or in the UK. And just this shootout in the Alexander Palace Hotel recently.
Oh, right,
was obviously a drug deal, infighting over drugs, and but it's mostly obviously the guerrilla groups in Kosovo. They were funded to fight the Serbs. They received funding and probably Western approved funding to make sure they bring down Milosevic made of drug money, cigarette smuggling money, trafficking in women, in organs, apparently even at some level.
Well, cigarette smuggling, cigarette smuggling is Milo Djukanovic's purview, so that's where he made his fortune over in Montenegro. The Albanians are good at the human organ trafficking, and I guess everybody participates in the regular old-fashioned drug trafficking and human trafficking of women and girls. But gosh, we made this wide diversion over into drugs and whatnot, but we forgot about just the ordinary scandals that are going on in Macedonia with the racket cases. What's the latest on Boki? How's his health?
Well, I mean, the key testimonies, the initial key testimonies by Kamchev and his wife are done. There are some lower level Kamchev people scheduled to testify next, and then obviously at some point we're going to have to hear from Boki, Katica, give their defense, and the most important point is Boki telling us where the money ended up, because the way things stand, he's currently being charged with taking the money, but it's obvious he didn't spend 1.5 million euros he extorted from Kamchev, or the total of about 20 million, which Vemera alleges that this group around Katica was able to collect from businessmen. It's clear that most of it ended up in the SDSM party. Now, whether Boki will be able to say this, we discussed the danger of him being Epstein before this happens.
Yes.
We're going to see about that. And there is another candidate apparently willing to talk. This is Frosina Reminski, the Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Parliament Speaker and top SDSM official. She's charged alongside Boki. She's the only SDSM person who has been charged of anything. Mm-hmm. She's the only person who the prosecutors dared to charge from the ruling government. And she's charged in this second case, which involves Boki, where they were extorting about 1.1 million, or maybe more. It was more like €1 million from two businessmen,
right?
From Bitola and Struga. They were both blackmailed, but also being promised to get in on some lucrative business action by Boki. Apparently, they were promised that they will be able to build real estate on valuable pieces of land in municipalities owned, controlled by SDSM mayors. So they gave $1 million to Boki, and now in exchange, they want the money back now that Boki is in prison. So Frosina was charged. She accepted the position of an honorary president of a bogus charity which Boki set up, so he could get this money and then allegedly invest them in. It was supposed to be like old people's homes. They were going to claim government subsidies, but then they were going to sell them commercially. This was the plan, and the businessmen were very open about this. They said this was Boki's plan. So Reminski was an official in this bogus charity, and she obviously used her friendship with Boki and clout to make sure, to pressure the businessmen to give the money. Mm-hmm. So now she's charged, and she came out and she started accusing a top SDSM police official who led the UBK security agency, where all the trouble in the country begins, that he set her up. She started saying, well, if I'm charged for being a friend of Boki, then, the interior minister, Oliver Spasovsky, was also friends with him. Zaev was also friends with him. So she started dropping names. And she knows a lot. And she's in a bad position and is apparently not especially willing to go to prison. And
wisely, she doesn't want to go to prison. I get that.
So she's offering herself. Well, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, she's reminding the government that she's in a bad place and she wants to be taken out of the bad place.
So again, so this is kind of, it's not a new development, but the fact that she is kind of subtly threatening that if she goes down, everybody else goes down. We've heard that from Boki. We've heard that from others. So at some point, this dam has got to break, and the names have got to come out, and the connections. It's this kind of spider web or octopus, whatever analogy you want to use, where it's all connected to the center. And from a political standpoint, looking at it from the standpoint of Citizen and Zoran Zaev, and this isn't good for them, for this to just be dragging out. It's going to continue now into January, which is just a little over a week away, and the new year, and then focusing on elections, even though people are rightly going to be focused on New Year's and Christmas and Old New Year's. They're still going to be talking about this. And then after the end of January, if this is continuing, and I think it will be, it's going to be a real drag on the government and their political prospects. And that can't be good for them. They've got to be wanting to make this go away, but I don't think they know how to.
Yeah, Witkowski had an interview this morning, and he said, he's actually very open. He said, we have more evidence. We have evidence proving that who the top person is, obviously hinting at Zaev. And he said, we're being tactical about it. We're going to publish it when it's tactically best for us. And
Sure.
He's obviously waiting for Zaev to call the elections, to resign in 12 days, as we mentioned. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, if he shoots the gun now, Zaev might give up on the elections and say, okay, well,
right,
I'm going to hang on until December and plot my escape strategy then. And meanwhile, they're still taking money they're still using Janeva to extort money for their purposes. There is a especially brazen attempt to extort money this time from the state budget, mm-hmm. which is supposed to go down tomorrow. One of the trials which Janeva initiated, it was a politically linked construction guy who also owns a university here, Fiat Tsanovsky. He was supposed to be like the Macedonian Muslim politician. It's a small minority which oftentimes Weimar attempts to bring them to the fold, who adopted Islam, and now they're practically not, we don't intermarry. They're kind of like shunned by Macedonians, but they're Macedonians. Mm-hmm. So they would marry Turks, they would marry Albanians.
These are Torbish?
Yeah, well, they kind of don't like the name being used for them. It roughly translates as carpetbaggers, so it's kind of like a derogatory term. We prefer calling them Muslim Macedonia, so Makedonci Muslimani.
Yeah.
So he was close with Gruevski, he was delivering some votes. He considered this his visa-free passage to build a huge construction residential complex and skirt building construction laws, so he built it bigger, less parking space than he was supposed to, significantly violations of the permit, and it was demolished 2011. And Tsanovsky claimed, this is Gruevski getting back at me because I supported another Muslim Macedonian crook, Vilja Ramkovsky, from the famous A1 television.
Yes.
Yeah, remember that.
Oh, yes.
Those were the days.
Things were a bit simpler then, I think.
Yeah, well, it's still it's all just amplified to 1,000. Right?
Yeah.
It's all the same people, same fight, the same arguments. And so the building was demolished, and now Fiat Tsanovsky is claiming, I think he initially demanded 60 million euros in damages from the government. Now he has moderated his position, he only demands 40 million. And Katica Janeva began a criminal investigation against Gruevski, the transportation minister who is in charge of construction, blah, blah, blah. The local officials who actually gave the orders for the demolition, claiming that it was unlawfully demolished, and give my friend the money. Mm-hmm. The thing is that Zoran Zaev, the Secret Service officer who began the whole wiretapping scandal, mm-hmm. he was working at Fiat Tsanovsky's university when the wiretaps began pouring in. So this places Tsanovsky at the center of the colored revolution and the attack on Gruevski. Mm-hmm. Ljubomir Frčkovski, the notorious interior minister, he's now the dean of the law faculty in Tsanovsky's university. Frčkovski's wife is defending Katica Janeva. So obviously Tsanovsky is very close to Katica. And on top of it all, the second criminal case against Boki 13, the racket 2, this accepting bribes from businessmen who were told they would be given permission to build these bogus old retirement people's homes and then turn them into commercial real estate.
Right.
230,000, I think, euros in this scheme came to Boki were given to Boki by a very close relative of Tsanovsky. So now the defense says, listen, guys, obviously the person who is demanding the damages in this case, in the demolition of his residential complex, through a very close relative, paid money to Boki 13, who is obviously very close to Katica Janeva. They're co-defendants in the trial, which is being held in the courtroom next door. So obviously Tsanovsky was giving money to Katica Janeva in exchange for her starting a criminal investigation with little evidence, with unfounded evidence, an unfounded case against us, in which he's claiming 40 million. So he gives Katica Janeva 200,000 euros, and then with her help, with the help of the criminal investigation she initiated, Tsanovsky collects 40 million from the government. That's a pretty good ROI.
Yeah.
Not bad for a few days' work, right?
Right.
And he was supporting the colored revolution from the start, as I said, through Verushevsky, through Ferchkovsky. So now this case is on trial. Zaev is angry beyond recognition because some of the cases have Janeva began against Gruevsky have dated. They have hit the statute of limitations, like the one about the Chinese highways. So now, in this particular case, it's possible one of the judges who, there is like a council of judges and a main judge. One of the judges who's in the council is supposed to retire in a few days. So if this happens, there's going to be a mistrial and they're going to have to start over again. So Zaev is ordering, explicitly demanding at public rallies that there must be sentences in the cases he initiated. And the judge, the main judge in this case, Ognan Stavrev, who comes from, who is the son of one of the most notorious communist era rulers in Macedonia, like Partia Paradčiks, he's now scheduling 12-hour-long court hearings all through last week, so he could complete the case by Tuesday.
Wow.
So basically there's going to be a sentencing tomorrow against Gruevsky. There is going to be a second sentence against Gruevsky, Miliana Kievsky, etc. Just so there is no mistrial, just so they can fast-track this payment of a huge amount of damages to Fiat Tsanovsky, and apparently Tsanovsky, I suppose, is going to flee the country the morning after and with his money, and he's not going to stick around for a Vemera government to return. And they're still trying to use Katica Janeva to extort money, this time from the state budget, and this is twice more than they extorted so far, this sum.
Well,
from private businesses.
Yes. Listeners, there will be a quiz at the end of this podcast asking you to name all of the people that have been accused or indicted in the current racket scandals rocking Macedonia, as well as bonus points for identifying the amounts of money that have been tossed around and given away and things like that. In all of this, as you were just talking about that, and I was kind of almost my eyes were glazing over because I couldn't follow it, and I would need to take a large wall and put several large pieces of white paper on there, and then just start graphing it out and sketching it out. But this, is we both follow the news daily about Macedonia and what's going on there, and we know that after Prespa and after the forced name change, and even as early as, through the summer and into the fall, the international community was feting Zoran Zaev and Nikola Dimitrov and all those guys, and that's really, there's been a real major drop-off on that, and I don't think, they cannot wait to get rid of this baggage that they've got. They're trying to figure out how to, I was trying to think of a polite word there, they know that he is anathema, that they made a mistake. Well, they got what they want. They didn't make a mistake. They got what they want. But now they don't need him. And so they were happy to discard him like a used, go ahead and fill in your own word there. And that's what they're going to do. And he doesn't realize that. He's so stupid. He's so stupid. He thinks that he is going to be saved by the internationals whose work he did, and that is just not the case. And we know that he can't go anywhere. He can't leave Macedonia and go to one of the international think tanks or the NGO community, things like that. Nikola Dimitrov can. He's urbane. He's suave. He's sophisticated. He's a liar like the best of them, and he does it well. But Zaev isn't. So anyway, gosh, I think that's a wrap on the scandals for now.
Yeah, I'm gonna go work on the chart.
Please do, and it'll take several pictures. You'll have to kind of take pictures of each part and then stitch them together in a Photoshop type thing, so you can get the one big picture of it all.
Yeah, we had one of those for Ramkovsky back in the day.
Right, because I've been around Macedonia so long, Cvetin, so that when you say Veli Ramkovsky, the first thing that comes to my mind is frozen chickens. And I'm curious to how many of our listeners, or how many Macedonians, or how many of the internationals will understand that reference. And so we'll just leave it at that. Where is
Julian Milovanovic sure will recognize it. There was a WikiLeaks in which she was telling Gruevski to finally arrest Veli Ramkovsky. Or, she was complaining that he owed so much money to American partners for media development.
Media Development Loan Fund.
Yeah. And she's literally in the WikiLeaks telling Gruevski to fix this issue. And Gruevski came up with this whole program of court-appointed enforcement agents who now are actually very efficient. There's no chance now that somebody owes you money and hides it from one bank account to another. They're going to find you, they're going to collect your money, and they're going to give it back to you and then charge a huge bonus for themselves. So we've actually reformed the country tremendously thanks to Veli Ramkovsky. But then when Gruevski actually made the next logical step and had Ramkovsky charged, or the prosecutors had Ramkovsky charged for all of his frauds, then the U.S. Embassy, which was, as I said, in a WikiLeaks cable, telling Gruevski to go and do this. And then Phil Ricker by then was ambassador, and he was like, "These are my friends. I've broken bread with these people. How dare you arrest them? They're the opposition television." Screw them all.
Phil Ricker. I'm surprised he hasn't got more caught up in the Ukraine scandal going on over here than he has. I mean, he testified, I think, before the Senate, but there's another fool and a fraud. Anyway.
8 maids are milking, 7 swans are swimming, 6 geese are laying. 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds.
And welcome back to the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. This is Cvetin Shilimanov calling in from Skopje, Macedonia, and we have Jason Miko on the line from Tucson, Arizona. And it's the portion of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast where we go for our farmers picks. I already did mine. It was the Familia Markovsky, the Markovsky family, the USAID funded program, which was hilariously meant to educate Macedonians in the virtue of fighting corruption and standing up for yourself and standing up to conservatives when they're in power, and is nowadays best known as the show which gave us, whose lead actress was caught organizing a transport of 3 tons of cocaine from Colombia to the United Kingdom in a submarine. So that turned out well. Jason, do you have something that can top this?
I do. I have something uplifting, which is generally the way I like to end with a farmer's pick. And as you know, I like to poke around on the Google machine and the internets and the interwebs to find random things about Macedonia. I found this piece from August of 2019 from the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC travel show. It covers several countries, but it also mentions Macedonia, and Macedonia is up front, and their correspondent is at Ohrid at the Bay of Bones, and at the archaeological expedition there, and she goes diving and talks about that and the history and about Ohrid in general, and just what a jewel it is for Macedonia. And of course, the great thing is that this piece that I found, at least, is from August of 2019. It might be earlier than that, but all they do is talk about Macedonia. They never mention the N-word. So I'm always appreciative of that. And here in the middle, or the beginning of winter, I should say, to see these folks diving at Macedonia's Lake Ohrid, which is just a jewel, as we all know, it warms my heart to see that. So we'll put a link up to that. That is my farmer's pick. Again, we are recording this on December 22. It'll drop on December 23. I think it would be appropriate to wish all of our listeners and friends a very Merry Christmas. No, you know what? I am bound and determined to break the Macedonian Information Agency of that habit of just wishing Catholic believers a Merry Christmas. So to Catholics, Protestants,
I kept doing that while I was still working there. I kept telling them to fix that, but now I'm no longer there. So, but this goes back to the invasion of Constantinople. So since then, all of us Eastern Christians consider everybody on the West to be a Latin Catholic aggressor. And okay, I'm gonna stop myself.
Yes, well, we wish all who celebrate, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, a very Merry Christmas.
And don't get me started on the Orthodox who celebrate Christmas. Okay.
We'll do a separate one. Obviously, we'll do another podcast for New Year's and then Orthodox Christmas. With a bit of a surprise on the Orthodox Christmas one, which we will leave our listeners waiting for until that time. So until then, Cvetin, a very Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you, Jason. Merry Christmas to you and all your viewers and to everybody listening to us.
All right, take care.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Swimming.